opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Today is January 1st. Carolyn and I hope you're having a wonderful Christmas season. Today we have for you exclusive footage from CHD's Moment of Truth conference. This morning we're going to air Freedom Playing to Win and How to Escape the Encroaching Control Grid. And Carolyn and I are very familiar because we were at the conference and we were on the panel. I gave the speech. Carolyn, that was a great panel.
Oh, it was wonderful. And the whole conference was wonderful. If you all didn't get to go to the next one. It was sold out. It was fabulous.
So on the panel, How to Escape the Encroaching Control Grid, we had Polly, we had Meryl, we had Ray Flores, we had you, and it got so interesting and exciting. Leslie Manukian popped out of the audience and came up and even participated. It was great. It was just very rock and roll, and I think the audience really enjoyed it. So you're going to enjoy it today. It's a great way to start the New Year's. Carolyn and I look so forward to doing Financial Rebellion with you in 2026. Something you want to add, Carolyn?
Yes, and the main message on the panel was get off the couch, and we're going to be talking about that frequently.
Yeah. We're going to be off the couch in 2026 on Financial Rebellion, and you're going to be off the couch with us. We are going to stop the control grid. Anyway, right. So we hope you enjoy this presentation, and we wish you the happiest of New Year's.
Happy New Year.
Lou? Okay. Every week we publish a tune. It's a Larry Report. This is one of my favorite ones. It says, woman's checking out at the grocery store. It says, how would you like to pay? And she's wearing a little checkout badge that says New World Order. It says, cash or slavery? Who here uses cash every second that they can, every chance that they can? Oh, okay, I recommend this to everyone because the digital control grid cannot happen unless we go to 100% digital. So one of the things we can all do is roll it back. Now, one of the things I've heard again and again at this conference, oh, you can't stop the digital ID and programmable money. Yes, you can. Yes, you can, but what is it going to take? Just feel like you're at church for a second. It's going to take getting off the couch. I want everybody to stand up and say as loud as you can, get off the couch. I knew you'd do it on the first one. Okay, so I'm going to be saying this again. We're going to talk about getting off the couch. Okay, next slide, Lou. Okay, I want to talk to you about mind, and then I want to talk about money. You know me, I always want to talk about money and financial freedom. So let's talk about mind. We just published a report on the Salir report, great report by Josh Dahman, one of the best we've ever published, called Cognitive Liberty. If you are going to get off the couch and we are going to remain free, what do we need? We need our minds, okay? And our minds are under attack in many different directions. You just heard that wonderful panel about the towers. What do the towers deliver? I've got my phone in the Faraday bag. They deliver surveillance. Somebody, who else here has got their phone in a Faraday bag? Oh, good for you. So they deliver surveillance, they track you. Dr. Weldon, everybody hear Dr. Weldon yesterday? He said, you always want to know more about your enemy than they know about you, right? But what does our enemy use these for? They know a lot more about us than we know about them. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have your mind. We just published one on cognitive liberty. We also published one, the top academic scholar we've ever found on the topic of military-grade neurowarfare. You need to know about this because you need to protect your mind. Next slide. Okay, when you carry, you think this is a communication device. It's not. It's a surveillance and tracking device. So you need to realize that you are giving intimate access to what you say, where you go, what you write, what you text, what you do to your children, your friends, your family. One of the best books on teenagers wanting to transgender by Abigail Shrier, her number one recommendation, what was it? Don't give your children a smartphone. You know why? When you give a child a smartphone, you give organized crime, the people who ran Epstein, direct access to your child's subconscious. Is that a good idea? I don't think so. What are you giving your enemies? Are you giving them a control file? I used to be an investment advisor, and I would have a client sitting right in front of their smartphone, and they say, oh, well, when I sell those coins, I'm going to take them to the dealer, but I'm not going to pay taxes. You just gave your enemy a control file. You know what a control file is. When you go to see a congressman and he doesn't pay any attention to you, oftentimes, what was Epstein? In part, it was an operation to create control files on many, many powerful people, okay? But this is the question: do you have a human agency, or are you losing your human agency because you're allowing this kind of technology to persuade you? You know, I'll meet with people and they say, I can't imagine my family, after everything we know, is still injecting COVID shots in themselves and their children. Why is that? It may be because of this. Okay, next slide. We now have reports that telecommunication companies literally think they can read our thoughts. And AI can read our thoughts, okay? Go to the next slide. You want to presume that if you want human agency and you want to know more about your enemy than they know about you, you've got to rethink the value of privacy and how you do it. As I said, at the Solari team, we try and keep this turned off. I have to use it when I travel, but we keep it turned off and in the Faraday bank whenever we can. Next slide. Okay, so one of the things we always try and do is, in 2017, I was at a conference in the Aspen Institute, and they had us all use QR codes, and the next thing you know, they were tracking us throughout the conference and influencing where we went, and sort of, you know, if they wanted people to move over to this workshop, they'd send messages saying, oh, you know, exciting, it's over here. And they were literally steering everyone through their QR codes. Now, when you talk to the conference organizers, they say, we have to have QR codes because the audience wants them. Okay? So you can stop it by saying, I don't want QR codes. Let me show you where QR codes are going. If we could just play this video, Lou. To get their vaccines, all defined by their QR code. Just realized Lou gave me a clicker. Do I know how to work it? Yes, here we go. No, back. Okay. So let's talk about, I always talk about the digital control grid. Who here knows what I mean when I say digital control grid? Okay. So there are three pillars to the digital control grid. The first one, the next one, the most important one, and I hate to say it, the one, if you're from Texas, you need to roll this back because Texas is going the wrong way, is a digital ID. So Polly, Tommy, Carolyn Betts, and I do Financial Rebellion every week, except for the last week of the month. On Thursday, Twyla Braz has been on 3 times to talk about the digital ID. She's going to be on next Thursday. What's so important about the digital ID? The digital ID makes sure you have a high precision way of identifying people, and I can make sure you're you, and I can apply very special rules to you, okay? Why do we need all these AI and data centers? Do you know why? 4,000 data centers either built or being built in America. What is AI good at? It's good at tracking, simulating, monitoring, calculating everything that can be tracked mathematically, like spatial movements or money, right? So if you want to get programmable money, you need a high-quality digital ID, and you need the ability to process all this data. Now, all across the country, you'll hear, oh, we have to have a digital ID. We have to have a digital ID to protect our children from what's happening to them online. So we need to verify that they're 18 or over before they get online. Does that make sense to you? You know what I hear? I hear we're going to make it very easy for the people who did Epstein to now control our children because they all have a digital ID and they can be tracked and surveilled. That's what I hear. You hear, oh, we need a digital ID for immigration or election fraud. Did we have border patrols and border control and elections before digital technology existed? Right, did it work better than it does now? Yep, okay. So be careful. Don't get tricked into thinking we need a digital ID. A digital ID is the next step for a digital control grid. And if we get a digital ID system, then we're in real trouble, because what do we do next? We can hook it up with the surveillance and coercion. Everybody here, does anybody here feel their property taxes are too low? Okay, that's what I thought. So if you look at coercion, all across the country, we see municipalities not only financing higher energy and water costs for data center, but they are financing something called Flock and now Skydio. Anybody here fighting Flock in their municipality? Your taxes are paying to build the digital control grid, the coercion part with drones and surveillance in your area, and you as a taxpayer can stop it. Okay, but the big one is programmable money. So for years, we've now talked about CBDC, but CBDC is just programmable money issued by the central bank. The Genius Act just passed this summer, creating a regulatory framework for stablecoins, and now the Clarity Act is expected to be passed before Thanksgiving, and that is programmable money as it relates to assets. Those two systems are created to create a completely programmable money, digital money, and it's one of the reasons it's so important not to give up on cash in building analog systems. Now, why am I so concerned about programmable money plus digital ID? Everything you've heard today. So is there anybody here who doesn't know what happened to the Canadian truckers? Is there anybody here who wants to be a Canadian trucker? Okay, so here's what happens. We've seen CHD do amazing, miraculous things over the last 5+ years in terms of going into court, going to the legislature, getting enormous steps to protect our health freedom. If digital IDs and financial programmable money lock in, what happens to all of that? Gone. What happens to all the things we've done for food freedom? Meryl Nass is over here. She's going to be on the panel with Carolyn and Polly and Ray Flores and me. What happens to our food freedom? Gone. So we have a marvelous woman named Susan Luchas up in South Dakota who runs our Team Cash. And she said, I couldn't get through to people. So now I just say, ring-a-ding-ding, it's 2030, hello, Mrs. Smith, I'm from the government, we're calling to tell you if you don't transgender your 3 children, we're gonna turn off your money. She said that works in South Dakota. It's clearly not that popular here. Okay, I wanna show you several videos. Now the first one I'm gonna show you, many of you have seen. It's Augustine Carstens, who runs the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. Until recently, the construct by which we were going to implement programmable money worldwide was every central bank in every nation was going to issue a CBDC and make sure there was a digital ID. Vaccine passports didn't work, so now we're going to these other systems that we're watching. And every central bank issues its CBDC, it rolls up and coordinates through the BIS. The Treasury and the Fed just scrambled the plan. They announced, no, we're going to do stable coins. And the US government is basically going to offer stable coins, dollar denominated, to 8 billion citizens around the world. And we're going to try and be one central bank with one programmable money. So there's a little bit of a currency war going on. But when you listen to this video, I want you to hear when he says CBDC, just hear programmable money. Because the CBDC is central bank programmable money. Stablecoin, as envisioned by the administration, is simply the people who own the central bank issuing it directly, and it gives them more separation from regulatory control by Congress. Okay, so this is Augustine Carson's talking in 2020. I have never been so shocked at watching a central banker speak. This is the first time in my life I ever saw a central banker tell the truth. In 59 seconds, he's going to tell you why he loves programmable money.
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
Doesn't that warm your heart? So let me tell you what he just told you. First, he told you that your money in the bank is not your money, it's their money. It's their expression of central bank liability. But he also told you they can make the rules and they can enforce them. And with data centers of the kind that we're putting into place and AI, it means for every person in this audience, I can have a different set of rules depending on whether you've been good or bad. You know, it's like Christmas. If you were bad, you get switches and ashes in your stocking, right? And so we can make very fine-tooth incentive systems. This is the Chinese social credit system is essentially what he's talking about. But we can make very defined objectives of how useful you are to the system and how much value you create the system and set the rules to manage you accordingly, okay? So let's look at what that might feel like. We all know that the digital ID is being pushed heavily in England, and if you don't do what you're told, you know, they're saying if you don't get the digital ID, you can't work. So let's just take a look at what that looks like.
Can I see your BRIC card, please?
I don't have one. I don't have a smartphone.
Can I get another pint, please?
Sorry, sir. Your BRIC card says you've exceeded your alcohol quota for this week.
Sorry, sir. Your BRIC card says you've already flown twice this year. We're having to restrict passengers with higher than average emissions profiles.
Sorry, I'm afraid your funds have been temporarily frozen. Your recent social media post did not align with the government's narrative.
Sorry, I'm afraid your BRIC card says you cannot purchase any more meat this week as part of our commitment to achieving net zero.
I've just logged in using my BRIC card and it's saying I've already had 3 hours of internet today and it's locked me out.
That's what it's going to feel like. Okay, so the last one I want to show you is Richard Werner, who I think is the top economist and expert on central banking in the world, who's sort of on our team. This is Richard and I were in Malmo, Sweden in 2023. And this is Richard describing what a central banker told him CBDC or programmable, in this case, programmable money looked like.
Also, they never talk about the nature of this CBDC. What is it actually going to look like? They never talk about that. Right. But I heard one European central banker tell me what it's going to look like. He saw it. He was invited to one of the old central banks in Europe that are very much promoting this. And they showed him. And, you know, he's a top, executive director of another central bank in Europe. And there's no reason to believe that he was telling me a story. And he was around this large and would be implanted under your skin. So that is the plan.
Right. So you can laugh at that.
And of course, that has other implications on top of what we've mentioned, on top of the control aspects, because that actually enters your body. In my view, violates human dignity, and can be then used for even in terms of functionality beyond the monetary and economic transaction purposes. So highly dangerous and definitely something we have to oppose. And so using cash is one of the things we can do to make sure that the hurdle will be higher for the central planners to introduce the CBDC?
Now, unless you think that's far out, I don't know if you've seen the headline that Bill Gates is promoting an electronic tattoo that goes under your skin. And he says the great thing about it is it's so convenient, you don't have to carry around a smartphone. Right. Okay, so let me explain what this means. We've lived, if you're an American, you've lived in a Republican form of government, a republic, and the central bankers from 1913 on have run monetary policy. And the people's representatives have run fiscal policy. You vote for legislative representative, and they vote the fiscal policy. They decide the taxes that are going to be set and collected, and then how the taxes are going to be spent, and then the executive branch implements their direction. So you have a balance of power between the bankers and the people's representatives. What this means is the bankers are going to assert complete control of fiscal policy. They can set taxes, take it out of your bank account, decide how the taxes are going to be spent, and make the plan different for each and every person, so they can have enormous complexity by place, by family, by person, okay? So what we're talking about is a coup d'etat. Okay, so let's go. Okay, what can you do? I want to look quickly at your income statement. What you will discover, so I go to many audiences where I'm talking to thousands of people, and I look out, and there are tons of people who are going to work every day building the control grid. Then, if I talk to them about where they buy their food, where they purchase, what kind of media they watch and pay for, they're supporting the people who are building the control grid. Donations, they're supporting politicians, educational institutions or foundations that have rich endowments that are financing the control grid, or religious organizations that are promoting and supporting the control grid. And they always say to me, what are you going to do to stop the digital control grid? I was like, who can fight all of you? Okay? So we think of voting in an election every 2 or 4 years. But I assure you, we vote in the market every day. And it's like doing a detox. I used to liken it to a tapeworm. We have a tapeworm. You need to get the tapeworm out of your mind. You need to get the tapeworm out of your income statement. And then the next thing you need to do is get the tapeworm out of your balance sheet. So let's look at your balance sheet. Are you doing everything you can use to do cash? I'm telling you, 50% of Americans started to massively use cash by the end of the year. It would back up the control grid enormously, okay? And people say, oh, well, that could never happen. Yes, it could, because if enough people, if 5 to 10% of the people in America realize the alternative for their children and grandchildren is slavery, because that's where we're going, a digital concentration camp, you can do it. Why are you banking at the banks that did the financial crisis, who've done all the fraud, who have a systematic record of, they have a felony rap sheet that would make an organized, the Mexican cartels jealous, but we're still banking with them. Why are we doing that? We have the ability, I'm telling you, if everybody started to use cash as much as they could and shifted their money to a well-governed, well-managed community credit union or bank, there would be a financial rebellion. That's why Polly decided we would call this financial rebellion. Same with the credit cards. Some of the credit cards are doing everything they can to build the control grid. Now, I travel, I have to use a credit card. I can't use, Delta Airlines is not going to take cash, but you can minimize the amount that you do. Let's look at the other side of your balance sheet. Every month I send money, I'm in a savings plan, and every month I send money into the stock market. There are hundreds and hundreds of companies all around the world, great companies with good records and good dividends who are not building the control grid. 50% of the S&P right now is 7 stocks that are the leaders of building the control grid, okay? Palantir, one of the leaders of building the control grid, now has a forward earnings multiple of 242 times, okay? I have Salary Report subscribers who say, thank you for putting me on to Palantir so early. I'm making a fortune. It's great. I'm like, okay, you understand, after you finish making it and you lock into the digital concentration, they can take everything. And that is the history of the thing. Okay, one of the things I love are the health freedom activists who are making money on their Pfizer stock. No, I've had very powerful and important health freedom activists say, look, I have so much capital gains in Pfizer, I just can't sell. Okay? There is such a thing as spiritual reality. Finally, the plunder game. Our new wrap-up is on plunder. We have private equity firms which are totally destroying the country and destroying the economy, using criminal tactics, in my opinion, to do it. Why are we financing them? Okay? So, and this is the big one. Every week on the Salir Report, and every year we have a Hero of the Week and a Hero of the Year. 2 years ago, Polly Tommy was Hero of the Year. One of the things, and it's funny because one of the things we say when we're talking about Hero of the Year, Carolyn will laugh, and she knows this, is, you know, we constantly are finding great people through CHD who we want to make Hero of the Week. And I keep saying, we have to do some financial freedom people. We can't do health freedom people every week. So, but if you see this picture in this slide, it's, we have a hero wall up in my apartment in the Netherlands. And you probably can't see it, but Meryl is on the top row. And right down in the bottom, Carolyn Betts is on the bottom row. And you know, every time somebody comes to the Netherlands or we go to a conference, we take their pictures. And I'm a great believer in keeping my money in what I call the people bank, because it's the people in our lives and in our network who are going to turn this around. So who's your hero? I'm always shocked when somebody who is committed to financial freedom or food freedom or health freedom tells me how much they admire one of the leaders who's building the control grid. And I'm like, really? So who's your hero? Okay, so take action. What? I'm doing my best, thank you. As you notice, there are a lot of heroes at this conference. You know, people who are not, you know, when people say, oh, well, the digital ID, I was doing this over at Pierre Corey's place or booth today. They said, well, the digital ID and programmable money is inevitable. And I said, you know, I never predict victory for my enemies. I never do that. Okay, so I used to have, when I worked in the administration, I called it my sugar packet goals. Those were my 3 goals I had to get done. I could write them on a sugar packet, wouldn't tell anybody what they were, because in Washington, they'll make sure they stop you. And so I want you to leave here today with that sugar packet of the actions that you can take. Everybody's different. You know, some people can go to the legislature. Some people can pray. They're spiritual warriors. You do what you're led to do. But what I'm telling you is we are in a critical period where we still have time to turn the ship before it hits the iceberg. And if we hit the iceberg, then we are going into a world that those of us who grew up and lived in the United States can't even fathom. That's why I love the Eastern Europeans. Anybody here from Eastern Europe? Yeah, so they know, you know, we did this, we've done this, we've been to this movie, we are not going back. Okay, at the Saleri Report, we have a wealth. We spent 2 years working with legislators to come up with a complete manual of everything you can do to protect financial freedom. Under the Constitution, the states have extraordinary powers to do that. We also have a building wealth learning plan, because what we need to do is instead, in health, in food, in financial freedom, we need to build the civilization that we want to live in, and we can do that. Who's going to do that? Well, let me do this first. Our 2 focuses right now, we have legislation that we're trying to pass in every state. We could sure use some help. The first one is to stop programmable money. Many of the states passed laws saying no CBDC or no debanking. Big banks couldn't debank. So efforts to stop what was happening. Now that we've switched from CBDC to stablecoin, we have to go back around and we have to pass bills. We call it the Consumer Payment Rights and Transparency Act, and the goal is you are not allowed to use programmable money in the states. The second bill, the big bill we're focused on, is protecting cash, and there are many things legislatures can do to keep cash alive and keep it working and liquid in your state. We have at the bottom of Saleri a financial transaction freedom website. You can sign up. We have monthly briefings for legislatures. Our next briefing is this coming Thursday on the Consumer Payment Rights and Transparency Act. So if you're interested in supporting that in your state, please plug in. Finally, we've started something called the Young Builders Course. We're launching it in February, in fact, in Florida in 2026. We believe the people who are going to build the real alternatives are the young people. And so the question is, how do we make sure we get to them, we give them the information they need to be successful? How do we give them the education and the tools they need to build this kind of a building wealth future? And finally, I just want to remind you again, how would you like to pay? Cash? And what are you going to do? Get off the couch. Say it again. Get off the couch. Get off the couch. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We have a great panel coming.
All right, this is important, and Catherine and Carolyn have been trying to educate me and the viewers at CHD.TV for years about this and warning us, so this is an important panel to have. So thank you for that, Catherine. We will get off the couch and we will use cash. I'm going to go straight to Ray first, because you are doing something very interesting with the national parks. I want to hear about that, and I want to hear, is it legal for businesses to say, no, we're not going to take your cash?
Well, yes, it is. It is legal unless there's a local ordinance that says that they must accept cash. However, and there have been cases where the private entities or municipalities have won. So the biggest problem that we face is, how do we turn causes into cases? Well, nobody's ever tried suing the national government to accept cash, to make them accept cash. It seems counterintuitive that the government would refuse its own money. So, and worst of all, why is it at our national parks? There are over 30 national parks in the country that do not accept cash for entry fees. So I have a lawsuit against them, funded, right? So that's where that is right now, and we'll see how it plays out.
And while I've got you, I want to ask you about smart cities as well, because this plays into it, doesn't it? And anyone else who wants to just jump in.
Well, yeah, I mean, the linchpin to the surveillance state is the cashless program, the electronic payment program. And in LA, they're implementing Smart LA 28, where they're having 10,000 5G towers in a grid. They are getting ready for the Olympics. They're going to make it a smart city, which will be nice for a change, won't it? and so the whole idea is that when you're driving, you'll be tracked. When you're walking down the street, you'll be tracked, who you're with, what you're talking about, where you're going, where you've been. And the beginning of it started at the LA airport, where you sign up for the bio identifiers, and then they track you throughout the airport, and that's how they're using that then to implement it into the cities. So they're spending $7 billion on the Olympics. $2 billion of it is for infrastructure for the smart city. So their goal is to make it so that they're going to know where you're going all the time.
Okay, this is a question for all of the panel. Any of you can answer this, because this bothers me. So we saw in COVID, the young, I'm going to talk about the young, okay? We saw the young cave in COVID because they wanted to go to the concert, or they wanted to, go to a pub or whatever it may be. So they took their shots so that they could do these things. Once this whole digital ID starts to play, and we just saw the Brit card thing, which was actually petrifying, they're going to cave again. How are we going to stop them and make them understand that caving for a pint is disastrous for the future?
So I don't think they are all going to cave. So you see a bifurcation in all age groups, but particularly in Generation Z, where you have some percentage. I was just out in Salt Lake, and I walk into a coffee shop, and there's like a 25-year-old, and they're playing 33 LPs on a turntable. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a whole group of them who see the trap, and they're not buying it. So what I will tell you is the history of freedom, if you go back and study the history of freedom, it doesn't take everybody. It takes a very difficult, noisy 10 to 15%. People just like you. And that's what turns the ship.
All right, thank you. I hope you're right. Meryl, let's go to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think, first of all, one needs to acknowledge, look, there's people who are trying to take over the world. And there are probably different groups, and they're trying to do it in different ways. But once we had the technology for surveillance, once everybody had computers and smartphones, once these networks were built, and once we had banks that were programmed to win, that the bank is like the house, in a gambling casino. They will always win because of the way the system is set up. So once you have that in place, right, there are always going to be evil people who know how to use that system and can use it to take over the world. Now, they have a lot of ways of doing it. They have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, et cetera. The WHO was part of it. We've slowed that down. Taking over the food supply is another important part. But if you take that in and reprogram your mind to always, it's a very, very hard and black thing, but if you can say, okay, this is just how it is, and we have to defeat them, and so the way to do that is to live your life. You've reprogrammed your mind. You understand that. You're not putting it into your unconscious. You understand it at every moment of your life. And you have to be okay with it because that is reality. And then you live your life all the time, and you teach, and your children get to know because you're always exemplifying that understanding of how you defeat it. All the choices you make in your life are made to maintain freedom going forward for our children and grandchildren.
Well said. Carolyn.
Well, as an attorney, I think it's really important that young people understand the U.S. Constitution and what exactly is the First Amendment. I heard people say things like, well, hate speech isn't covered by the First Amendment, And it's like, wait a minute, hate speech is the main thing that is covered by the First Amendment. And I also think, maybe somebody will make a video that was similar to the one we saw, but showing that you can't buy, the government will decide you can't buy marijuana in states where it's legal, and they'll cut off your money if you try to buy marijuana. You've got to find it where the sweet spot is with young people. Maybe they'll cut off their ability to play computer games. You can only play 1 hour of computer games a day, which I think would be a good idea. But I don't think it's a good idea for the U.S. government to get involved in that. And I also want to just say that there was a hearing, I can't remember whether it was House or Senate, where it was revealed that Bank of America gave up MCC code information on the September 6th, people who were in Washington, D.C. for September 6th. And they didn't even have a warrant. And Bank of America turned over the credit card MCC code. Understand that when you use a credit card, there's a category that says what you bought. And so it shows if you had a hotel room in Washington, D.C., which is what they wanted to know, and whether you patronized a place where you could buy a gun.
January 6th or September 6th?
I'm sorry, January 6th, yes. And that was the basis on which some people were, probably a lot of the people were arrested because they could identify who was in a hotel in Washington between the a couple days before and a couple days after, and who went to a place where they could buy a gun.
So one of the most important things you can do when it comes to your daily and weekly purchases, you can't control financial freedom. You can't control the financial system unless you can control food. And if you can't control food, everybody can grow their own food and make community currencies. In the Great Depression, 3,100 counties in America, there were 3,100 community currencies, okay? But to keep farmers alive, the farmer needs to get the retail price. And when the farmer gets the retail price, we get food that doesn't poison us. Because if you go to the grocery store, increasingly, you're getting food that is poisoning you. So maybe, Meryl, if you could just say a few words about what you're doing to help people see the need to protect themselves from the great poisoning, but to keep their local farmers alive.
The institution of farming and family farms has been under attack for a long time. So there are two things happening. One is, of course, that corporations want to get bigger, want to have more control. And so at this point in time, every single agricultural industry has become a near monopoly, where 4 companies or fewer control over 60% of the activity for that industry, like seeds. You know, Monsanto is in control of most seeds. The 4 meat packers control 85% of beef processing in the United States. 4 companies control 67% of pork processing. And so once they get that kind of centralization and power, they control the prices that the farmers get for their commodities, and they control the prices farmers have to pay for things like tractors, seeds, fertilizer, et cetera. So what we have is a system in which the farmer got 70% of the retail price of beef in 1970, and now the farmer gets 30% of the retail price of beef today. And as a result of that, we have fewer cows being raised in the United States than at any time since 1951, even though the population has more than doubled, I think. In the 7 years between 2017 and 2024, 160,000 farms went bankrupt. 20 million acres are no longer in production than were in 2017. And we have 1.9 million farms in the US. We've lost 8% of our farms in 7 years. Everything is conspiring against the farmer, in part because the large financial companies want to buy up the land. The land has become very valuable, but the farmer is getting almost nothing for his crops and his animal. Until this year, when we had such a dearth of meat that the price of meat went up. But anyway, so my organization, Door to Freedom, has created a project called Save Our Food and Farms. We have a website in construction, but we have listed 50 ways that farmers are being attacked, and a lot of other information we don't just list the 50 ways, but we have a story up to explain each one. And we have a lot of more information. And so farmers are under attack, but the eaters are under attack and they don't know it. So because of the way the federal government subsidizes farming, and we spend, this year I think we're spending over $50 billion subsidizing farming, but it goes to the very wealthiest, largest farmers and industrial farms. It doesn't go to the farmers who are producing the food that we want to actually eat. And it's subsidizing the commodification of crops, so that the corn, for instance, goes for gas oil, et cetera. I'm talking for too long, but this crisis will affect us very soon because things are being centralized more and more. More farmers are going under, and unless we make a change for the farmers, the eaters are going to be out of luck. We won't be able to afford healthy food.
Thank you, Mel. Okay, we've only got 6 minutes left. So I want to go through really, what do you all want us to do? So each of you tell us what you want us to do, because we understand the problem. Catherine laid that out beautifully, as did you guys as well. So what's the solution here? Get off the couch and pay cash, we get that, and do what? Ray, over to you first.
Okay, so CHD sued the Los Angeles over the smart city in a FOIA case, and what we got was their LA's code of digital ethics, And in it, what they said was that we're guaranteed a right of privacy. They're not going to sell, store, or track us. Yeah, right. Huh? That's a funny one. And so, but that kind of platitude gives people comfort. And so in the famous case on surveillance of whether or not it's constitutional to surveil public, people in public, it has a two-part test that Justice Harlan laid out in his concurrence in Katz v. the United States. Was, first of all, did that person have a subjective expectation of privacy? And second, was whether society was prepared to accept their feelings as reasonable. So then, if everybody allows surveillance, then society becomes one step closer to making it constitutional for us to be surveilled 24/7 wherever we go.
So are we saying here, use cash, get rid of our smartphones? God knows how we'll survive with that. To be honest, I mean, most of us work remotely. I'm sure we can, but we need to be told, we need to be walked through how we got to do this, because it's hard.
So I'm going to tell a story, and I'm going to use a 4-letter word.
Oh, no.
Okay, go on. Okay, so I had a wonderful subscriber call me from Arizona. She said, I've been fighting 5G for years. If I'm going to keep fighting, I have to go public, but I'm a very shy person. I'm not comfortable doing that. And I said, well, have you seen the movie War Room? Are you a Christian? She said, yes, I'm a Christian. I'm a devout Christian. I said, have you seen the movie War Room? She said, no. I said, get War Room. It's about spiritual warfare, opening a prayer closet and battling it through prayer. And I said, just try it. Just, if you're led to do it, open a prayer closet and battle this spiritually. I don't know what happened, but several weeks later, she emailed me back and she said, oh my God, this shit works. So if you're a chicken and you don't want to help us get, stop programmable money at the state legislature, you can pray and you can use cash and you can stop poisoning your family by buying at the grocery store and go find your local farmers and farmer network and buy lots of food. And you can certainly donate to support Ray's efforts at CHD, right? Yay.
So we can do this. How many of us is it going to take in America to actually take this control grid down? By
5 to 10%. 5 to 10% use cash as much as they can, whenever they can, and it's working, and I'll tell you why. One of the reasons it's working, people are finally beginning to realize you can't depend on electricity. After Western North Carolina and East Tennessee, the floods, 2 of the Scandinavian central banks who've led the way on cash came out and said, it was a mistake to roll back cash. We can't depend on electricity. We need to keep cash alive. So and with inflation, and this is why you're starting to see young people use cash. They're saying, I spend less when I use cash. And not only that, when I use cash, it circulates around the neighborhood. And after 5 transactions, it hasn't disappeared in all fees. So I use South Dakota as an example. 1 million people live in South Dakota, okay? 1 million people. Guess how much the credit card companies take out of South Dakota every year in fees? $700 million. That's $750 million. Imagine if that money stayed and was circulating around South Dakota. So inflation is one of the things that's bringing the young people in.
Mel, last words?
Well, I think we have to think about what could happen in the future. What's going to happen to your family? How do you protect them? The electricity can go down. I think, if the people who want to be rulers of the world get really nasty, all we have to do is cut their wires. You can use probably pellet guns to knock out these little 5G cells. You can use spray paint.
I think we need a disclaimer on that for children's health defense.
The French plumbers cut off the water and sewer to the French central bank during the Yellow Jackets. Did you know that? Yeah, central banks have trouble operating without toilets.
I mean, if the robots are coming for you, you use spray paint on their sensors, and then they won't work.
So these are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
I just have to say something to inspire you all, which is that in Vietnam and Thailand, they introduced digital currency and they banned cash. In Vietnam, they confiscated, I think it was 84 or 85 million accounts, bank accounts, because people refused to submit their biometrics. In Thailand, they introduced a digital currency and said, no more cash. And you know what happened? They debanked all these people, and so the businesses stopped accepting credit and only will receive cash. And so this is how we fight back, friends.
The amazing Leslie Mnookin there. All right, Carolyn.
Well, I want to say, first of all, since I see Leslie Mnookin here, I know two women over the age of 40 anyway, who have gotten state legislation enacted. And, you know, you can all do it. We can all do it. And I'm now working on educating the legislatures in the state of Ohio about how digital gold is dangerous because it's programmable. But I'm going to name drop. I sat next to Larry Palevsky at dinner last night, and I told him Catherine was going to say, "Get off the couch," and he said, "What does getting off the couch mean?" And after I had explained it to him, he said, when I go to a restaurant and they have a QR code menu, I tell them I make them give me a written menu. I spend cash whenever I can. I bank at a local credit union. And, you know, he's telling me all these things, and he said, what do you think of Bitcoin now? What does Catherine think about Bitcoin? And usually when people ask me that, it's because they have Bitcoin. So I said, well, Catherine says that it's, you know, it's a Ponzi scheme, so what you should do is take out all your principal and just figure you're gambling and leave it on the table. And he said, I don't own any Bitcoin. So, you know, these are, and the other thing I said is you need to contact your state legislators and give them hell about everything that they're doing that is not consistent with, you know, what we're talking about.
Thank you so much. Right. So here's the thing. You all saw Catherine talk. To me, the most disturbing image of that were those little children with QR codes around their necks, lining up in a distance to get their mandatory vaccination. So if nothing else, that should get you off the couch, because I have grandchildren and I do not want them to live in that world. So we fight together as a team. These people here, sitting up here, have been fighting for us for a long time. I'm very grateful for your education. I still have a lot to learn, but I will definitely get off the couch and will be using, who's going to be using cash here? We all going to use cash? Come on, guys, we can do it. All right, thank you to you for your time. We've run out of time, but thank you for your listening.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.